Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the channel. My name is Angela, and I'm a trauma-informed self-development specialist, and I coach you through the process of elevating from the person you came to be. Need some water. I coach you through the process of elevating from the person you came to be as a result of the things that's happened to you to the person you were created to be. And I teach you how to apply biblical and personal development principles to help you achieve inside-out success in life and business. In today's class, I want to talk about the importance of being able to set and maintain personal boundaries. Proverbs 25:28, I think it is. Let me check. Hang on, let me verify. Yes, Proverbs 25:28 says, "A person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls." So in biblical days, a city without walls was vulnerable to attack because they didn't have a natural defense against the enemies that would seek to come in and claim the city or take the city and make it their own. We find this in the book of Nehemiah. And there came a point in Nehemiah's life when it was time for him to do what he was created to do. We talk about that in every video. That's what we do here. Prepare you to do what God has created you to do, whether it is in life, ministry, or business, because really it's an overlap usually between all three. So he needed to erect this firm boundary that would keep Jerusalem in, Jerusalem safe, and their enemies out. So for us in our personal development space as human beings, we also have to have personal boundaries established in our lives. One, because it keeps us safe in a sense of we have some control as to what we will allow in our heart, in our mind, in our private space, and that which we will allow in spiritually. Because the word says if we don't guard our heart, we're in for trouble, because if we're letting anything that wants to come in, he says it's going to affect the life we experience. It's going to affect our circumstances, our existence, because he says guard your heart, because out of it flows the issues of life. For those of us that may have grown up in dysfunctional environments, with our family of origin, some of us may have been violated as children. Some of us may have grown up in group homes or in foster homes. And some of us were never taught, one, what personal boundaries are, or we were never taught that we could set boundaries and that our no literally meant no. And so as we grow up and we start learning about ourselves, we start doing the inner work, we're healing and we're growing and we're getting closer to God, and God is revealing things to us and giving us glimpses into this great plan for our lives that he has. He's saying, before I can give you that which I promised you, I need you to have the discipline and self-control and the courage to set boundaries around your existence. Because if you don't do that, and I give you that which I've set aside for you, if I give it to you and you don't have any boundaries, you're either going to lose it or it's going to be taken away from you. So let's take a look at the definition of personal boundaries. So personal boundaries are the limits and rules we set for ourselves within relationships. A person with healthy boundaries can say no to others when they want to, but they are also comfortable opening themselves up to intimacy and close relationships. This is vitally important information, specifically for those that may have a codependency history. And people don't really understand what codependency is, because the general meaning that most people hear is that you're controlling, you're trying to control another human being. And there is aspects of control or trying to obtain power and control over another human being, but it's not coming out of, I just want to control you to get you to do what I want you to do. Most of the time, this need to control our environment as well as other people in the environment comes from a history where we did not have control. So the 3 types of personal boundaries we're going to talk about today are rigid, porous, and healthy. On one end of the continuum, we have rigid boundaries. And then on the other end of the continuum, we have porous boundaries. And if you recall in the past, I've talked about we always want to kind of stay in that balanced area, that middle ground. Excuse me, that was my little dog, Sophie. But she lives here and I love her. So she's doing what she does best, guarding the neighborhood. But so we'll take a look at each of these different types of personal boundaries, and I'll give you, and what I'm using actually is a handout that I usually use in my groups. The first one is the rigid boundary. And this type of person with the rigid boundary, so I always use the visualization of like this wall, right? It's a fortress around you. So it's a hard boundary. Picture it like a cinder block wall around you with no gate to open and close. So the person with rigid boundaries typically avoids intimacy and close relationships. They're unlikely to ask for help, and they have very few close relationships. They can be very protective of their personal information. And I don't mean in the healthy sense where, my personal information is on a need to know basis. And for me, most people, you don't need to know, right? I keep my personal life pretty close to the vest, but this borders on unhealthy to where I am just very guarded. They may seem detached even with romantic partners, and they keep others at a distance to avoid the possibility of rejection. And that last one is key. Most of the people with rigid boundaries have either been violated in some way, shape, or form, or they have abandonment, rejection issues, and they experienced a deep sense of pain or loss at some point in their history. And in order to protect themselves and to prevent themselves from experiencing that depth of pain again, they'll put this boundary up. And so the thing about this rigid type boundary is, yes, you might be safe inside this wall or this fortress you've created, but the love that you seek as a human being, you'll never experience that. You'll never be able to experience healthy relationships because you are not open to the possibility of relating to another human being in a healthy way. So yes, you're safe, but just like your love can't get out, another person's love towards you can't get in. And 9 times out of 10, a person with the rigid boundaries does not stop at the human aspect of relationship. This boundary usually will affect your ability to be open to God and what He wants to do in your life as well. And so the other end of the continuum, we have the person with porous boundaries. And this person overshares personal information. They have difficulty saying no to the requests of others. They're over-involved with others' problems. They are dependent on the opinions of others. They are more accepting of abuse or disrespect, and they fear rejection if they do not comply with others. And so this last one, that fear of rejection, you see, they have that in common with the person with the rigid boundary. But this person, a lot of times you find porous boundaries in people that may have experienced some sexual trauma in their younger formative years. And they don't know that they can say no because someone took their power away before they even knew that they had the right to say no to someone. That power was taken away from them. And when we get deeper into our codependency talk and some lessons specifically about that, because these are the things that if we don't address these issues, they become their own type of self-limiting belief. And God is saying, hey, I created you to be here. What I have for you is here. So how do you get from here, where you are now, to where God has called you to be, when there's this barrier of all this unresolved mess between you and your future, your destiny? So God is saying, open yourself up to me. Open yourself up to my helpers, to your guides, to your mentors that I'm putting in your life. Let them help you through this process of inner healing so that you can become and go through that transformation, that metamorphosis of becoming the person I created you to be, so that you can have and receive that which I ordained for you before the foundation of the world. God has a whole storehouse of goodness set aside for us, and he's given us the key to it, because the moment we believe, Jesus said, I've given you the keys to the kingdom. But a lot of what God has for you, you cannot have until you do the work to become the person that will be able to sustain and maintain the goodness that he has for you. Because if we are given a thing before we are ready to have a thing, it can be destructive. And God loves us too much to give us anything that will destroy us and cause us to not become the person that we were created to be. So he's telling us, hey, you do this inner work. You're going to get out of rigidity. You're going to get out of this area of the porous boundary, and you're going to meet in the middle to this place of healthy. And so the healthy boundary consists of one, having values and their own opinions. You don't compromise your values for others. You share personal information in an appropriate way. That means you don't under or overshare. You know your personal wants and needs, and you know how to communicate them. So you're communicating openly, you're communicating effectively, and you're engaging in direct communication. So you know how to request to have a need met, and you are accepting when others say no to you. So people that usually grow up in dysfunction, no is usually tied to a feeling of rejection. So as we get healthier and as we grow and as we develop spiritually, we learn that just as I have the right to say no, other people have the right to say no as well. We learn that no is not a rejection of me. No is another person establishing or setting or maintaining their own boundary. My hope is that you'll springboard off this information I provided for you today. Get a little deeper in your own study about boundaries. And if you're not someone that has healthy boundaries, or if you are not able to set boundaries with others, you're not able to respect other people's boundaries, then start doing some introspection. Do your inner work. Figure out what has caused that disconnect. What has caused you not to be able to function in a healthy way in this part of your life, and see what God shows you. Pray about it, see what the word has to say about it, and just give God permission to come in and touch this pain point in your life. Let him heal that wound, that open wound that is causing you to not be able to live in the fullness of relationship and being able to relate in a healthy way to others and in a healthy way to God. Love and blessings. Bye-bye.